Now on the first one, the internal and external factors, the internal factors were basically twofold. One is that, as you know, the power plant companies were acquired. Two companies were acquired in 2012. So in May 2012, and then subsequently in October 2012. The third company was acquired in 2013. So there was a need, first of all, to harmonize the platforms across the companies. There was a need to institute common management to ensure best practice was translated across that platform. So that was a very big endeavor, and that was the primary reason why in November 2013 it did not make sense to do an IPO at that time. Yeah? But it's an understandable factor. Three very big companies that needed to be integrated and harmonized. Now, subsequent to that, as again I'm sure you will understand, for any IPO or public event, you want to show the ability of a company to grow and to get new projects. So in the course of 2014, 1MDB was working on acquiring 3B, Project 3B, as well as Project, what is now known as Project 4B. So those activities to seek an IPO, to seek these new awards of power plants, which at that time were either not yet awarded and or not yet funded. Because once you get the project, you need to get the funding, the debt funding, prior to doing the IPO. So that was what caused the delay, amongst others, of the November 2014 IPO. Now those were internal factors, and those were factors in our control. I think I don't need to elaborate on the external factors, but one very key external factors was the significant brickbats and criticism thrown against the company, mainly by, actually almost exclusively by members of the opposition, to the extent that certain opposition members even threatened to prevent major investors in Malaysia, such as EPF, KUAP, Tabung Haji, LTAT and so on, from participating in the IPO of Edra Energy. Now, if the biggest investors in the country are prevented or criticized for purchasing shares in 100% government-owned company, I think you can understand why it is difficult to undertake an IPO. So, in summary, these were the internal factors and the external factors that caused a delay in the IPO of a company. Having said that, we still have a responsibility to pay our interest, and we still have a responsibility to pay our principal. And we have been firm that we will meet our obligations, we will meet our responsibilities when they are due. Accordingly, we have taken the step that we discussed earlier, which is, given the difficulty in undertaking the IPO, we are selling outright the assets, and thank God we have 3 final binding and fully funded bids, or rather 3 bidders who have submitted final binding and fully funded bids for us to consider. So that was the first one. Now your second question was on the noise and the controversy. Right. Sorry, it was just quite a long one. The controversies on 1MDB have been there from day one. I think from 2010, 2011, YB Tony Pua has been raising one issue after another on 1MDB. I think much to his disappointment, nobody really paid any attention to him on this. And I think that's probably why he is so gung-ho in challenging me and issuing statements and wanting me to respond, because I think he's been ignored, rightly or wrongly, on these matters. What caused a turning point in the perception of the company was, number one, in November 2014, the announcement of a loss, 665 million ringgit loss Because prior to that, every year, so 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, 1MDB had hundreds of millions, if not billions of ringgit of profit, right? If you remember. So that was one turning point, November 2014. The second turning point was a repayment of a loan, a 2 billion ringgit loan to a consortium of local banks. And if you remember, there was a lot of noise towards the end of 2014 on this 2 billion ringgit loan that needed to be repaid. And the Edge at that time took on the challenge to emphasize this issue facing the company. So I think that got the attention, that together with the loss got the attention of the business community and so on. Now the biggest issue, as you are all aware, was when Tun Dr. Mahathir started his allegation of 42 billion ringgit hilang, 42 billion ringgit missing. When Tun Mahathir and those who were previously aligned to the government started their criticisms, that's when this matter became extremely controversial. So if you look back, again, it didn't happen overnight. There were various factors that happened over time that resulted in this controversy. And then, of course, there were the leaks from Sarawak Report, alleged documents that they posted, on a very selective basis to create a certain story. The Edge then picked that up, and we now know that the Edge, at least the publisher of the Edge, in fact, effectively stole that information, or promised to buy and then stole that information from a third party. And just to be clear, I'm not alleging anything. I'm just saying what I've read from media reports on this matter. So that caused another layer of controversy on this whole issue. So you can look back and you can see that why there is so much noise, and why, despite the answers that we have given, people don't want to believe us, because frankly, bad news sells more papers than good news or good stories. That's the reality. Having said that, and I think this is a very important point I would like all of you to at least highlight in your reporting. The government of Malaysia, in March, early March, the government itself, the cabinet itself, requested that the Auditor General Department, Jabatan Audit Negara, which is a very respected entity and has shown no fear or favor in its reporting, the government itself in early March, so just after Sarawak Report came out, just after the Edge articles came out, the government itself asked the Auditor General Department, Jabatan Audit Negara, to conduct a review of 1MDB's accounts. And I can assure you, they have been extremely thorough, and they have been extremely professional and independent in their work. And secondly, the government also said that the outcome or the final report from the Auditor General will be presented to the Public Accounts Committee, the PAC, which is bipartisan. So you have opposition and ruling party members in the PAC. So this means that very early on, when the controversies first started, the government itself said, let us get an independent party to review, and let the output from that independent party be presented to the PAC, which comprises both ruling party and opposition. Of course, after that, Bank Negara started its investigations. There were a number of police reports lodged, for example, by Dato' Khairuddin. So therefore, PDRM, the Police Diraja Malaysia, commenced its investigations. Our entire premises were raided. Substantially all our documents were seized on the 8th of July by PDRM. And then in July, the Anti-Corruption Commission also started its investigations. I'm pleased to say that the Anti-Corruption Commission said that it is not investigating 1MDB any further. They also confirmed that the 2.6 billion ringgit allegedly in the Prime Minister's accounts was not from 1MDB. So you will see that a number of these investigations, they were instituted by the government as early as March, so just a few weeks after Sarawak Report and Edge made the allegations. So in my mind, these controversies will be answered. So we have given our answers, but we have said, please don't believe us. Please let the independent authorities come to their own conclusions. And we have said from day one, I have always said, I'm prepared to attend the PAC, I'm prepared to answer questions to the lawful authorities of the country in the right forum for such matters. However, YB Tony Phua obviously, despite being a member of parliament, has a different view of this. He wants his limelight, so I'm also happy to meet him and answer his questions, just as I'm in front of you today, ladies and gentlemen, answering your questions. So we have nothing to hide. We have been very consistent with our answers. We have the facts, we have the figures. Now, of course, everyone is entitled to their own opinions. We respect that. We respect the investigating authorities who are conducting their investigations. And we continue to say, if there is any wrongdoing, then action must be taken under the law.